I was 3 days into a routine medical rotation on the Halden's Grace when the auxiliary board lit up with a flag I'd never seen used for anything but weather noise. The band itself was the TEL, Deprecated Human Compact Auxiliary 9, a frequency nobody official monitored anymore because nothing official was supposed to be listening on it. My comms officer, a quiet man named Iwo Castellan, brought it to me instead of the bridge, because he didn't trust it to survive contact with a duty log. He'd cross-referenced it against 6 years of compact filings first. Every one of them came back the same way. Agricultural distress, non-priority, archived without action. The colony sending it called itself Velisar Reach, a terrace settlement built into the permanent dusk side of a tidally locked moon, where a caste called the Kesavine grew luminous fungus vine across kilometers of stepped stone, harvesting the only light their world ever gave them, and turning it into food for 40,000 people. 6 years of raids by an outfit calling itself the HFY Concern. 6 years of filings. Every single one closed with the same stamp, signal consistent with agricultural telemetry error, no response required. Iwo didn't say much. He just showed me the waveform underneath the error. It wasn't noise. It was a voice, folded into the vine canopy's own growth cycle chatter, repeating the same 12 words in a caste dialect our translation matrix had to work for 4 minutes to untangle. "We are still here. We are still growing. Please." Captain Reyes read it once and diverted the ship before I finished my own second read. We came in low, through the moon's terminator line, where dusk never quite finished becoming night. The terraces spread out below us in bands of cold amber light. Vine light, not sunlight, since the Kesavine hadn't seen a real sunrise in generations. Even from orbit you could tell which terraces were burning. Fire doesn't look like anything else, no matter what planet you're standing on. Reyes ran the approach the way she runs every approach when the numbers are bad and the clock is worse. Quiet, economical, no wasted words on the bridge. She put 2 shuttles down on the lower access apron before the HFY crews on the upper tiers had finished registering that anything had entered the moon's shadow at all. That gap, she told me later, was the whole plan. 6 years of nobody coming had trained them to read every sensor ping as debris or drift static. We used that assumption exactly once, and it was enough. I went down with the second wave. Medical kit slung across my back, boots hitting stone terraces slick with condensation and worse. The air smelled like scorched fungus sugar, sweet and wrong. The Kesavine are small, amber carapaced, wings folded flat along their backs when they're afraid, and only unfolding when they've decided to run. Everyone I passed on the way up the terrace steps had wings folded. Down near the 3rd tier, though, I found one standing with her wings half open, shielding a knot of younger ones crouched behind a collapsed irrigation trellis. And she didn't fold them when she saw me coming. She held her ground and watched me the way you watch something you've decided you're finally allowed to hope about. Her name, once the translator caught up, was Sanoa Vel, Terrace Keeper, 3rd generation. She'd sent the last 4 filings herself, after her mother sent the first 2. "You came," she said. Not a question. She said it the way you'd confirm a measurement. "We came," I said, because there wasn't anything smarter to say, and started checking the young ones for smoke inhalation while our patrol swept the upper tiers. The young ones didn't cry, or if crying was a thing their species did, it wasn't a sound I recognized. They watched me the way Sanoa did, carefully, like people recalculating a fact they'd been taught to treat as permanent. One of them, small enough that his wing cases hadn't hardened yet, reached out and touched the fabric of my sleeve, then pulled his hand back fast, like he expected me to vanish for having been noticed too closely. I let him do it again a minute later, on his own terms, and said nothing about it either time. Some things don't need narrating. They just need to be allowed to happen twice, so the person doing them can believe the first time wasn't an accident. The HFY Concern hadn't expected resistance, because 6 years of silence had taught them there wouldn't be any. Their crews worked in loose, sloppy formation, more interested in herding than fighting, because herding was all they'd ever needed to do here. When our patrol came through the terrace gates, they weren't ready for anything that shot back, let alone anything that didn't need to. I heard the fight before I saw it end. Not gunfire so much as the absence of it. A long silence where HFY weapons should have kept firing and didn't, followed by boots on stone, unhurried. Their field commander was on his knees on the 4th tier when I came up to help with the wounded. A big man, human standard build under a scavenged pressure suit, no weapon anywhere near his hands, both of them raised loose and open. He was talking fast, in the clipped trade cant every raider outfit uses when they think speed will save them. "We didn't know Earth ran patrols this far out," he was saying, to Sergeant Dale Okonkwo, who had a rifle slung rather than raised, and an expression like a man reading a delivery manifest. Nobody runs patrols out here. Nobody's ever come. 6 years, nobody. You mistook nobody answering for nobody listening, Okonkwo said. Not loud, not cruel, just correcting a figure on a form. Different thing. The commander's mouth kept moving, working through the arithmetic of it. 6 years of silence they'd read as permission, recalculating in real time what silence had actually meant. I watched something in his face give way that had nothing to do with fear of the rifle. It was the specific collapse of a man discovering, all at once, that the ledger he'd been keeping was never the one that mattered. Okonkwo cuffed him without comment and moved to the next one. Behind him, 2 more HFY crew were already sitting where they'd been told to sit, hands laced behind their heads, watching the sky like they expected more ships to keep arriving indefinitely, the way a leak keeps dripping once you notice the ceiling is wet. One of them kept saying the same thing under his breath, half to himself, that there was supposed to be a schedule for this, that outfits like theirs kept records on which sectors answered distress calls and which didn't, that Velisar Reach had a clean 6-year record of silence, and silence was supposed to be reliable. Listening to him, I understood what had let this go on for 6 years. Not cruelty exactly, but administrative contempt. The assumption that a caste too small and quiet to matter could be filed away and left there. Nobody had bothered checking whether the silence was still true. I spent the next 6 hours doing the only kind of arithmetic I trust. Burns, smoke damage, 2 cracked exoskeletal plates that needed a field brace before they'd set wrong. Sanoa worked beside me the whole time without being asked, translating for the ones too frightened to try the trade cant themselves, holding a light steady over my hands when the terrace's own vine glow dimmed with damage. Somewhere past the 4th hour she asked me, quietly, why we'd come now, after 6 years of nothing. Nobody read your filings as anything but noise, I told her, because it was true, and I wasn't going to dress it up. One of my crew read the waveform underneath instead of the label on top of it. That's the whole story. No one decided you mattered more this month than last month. Somebody just finally looked. She was quiet a moment, wings settling flat, then rising again. Slow, like she was testing whether they still remembered how to do that on their own. We stopped believing anyone was listening at all, she said. We kept sending anyway. I don't know why. My mother said it was because stopping felt worse than being ignored. Good instinct, I said. Keep it. By the time the last transport lifted, we'd pulled 11 HFY crew off the terraces in restraints, the field commander among them, and left 206 Kesavine with a working perimeter, a repaired irrigation trellis, and a standing monitoring post on Auxiliary 9 that Iwo swore he'd keep live from now on personally. Filing be damned. Reyes didn't argue with him about jurisdiction, neither did I. The last thing I saw, lifting off the terrace at first real light, the moon's own thin dawn, not vine glow, was Sanoa standing at the edge of the 4th tier with her wings fully open for the first time since I'd met her, watching the transports go the way you watch weather clear, not waving, just watching, like she wanted to be sure it had actually happened before she let herself believe it had. I filed my report the way I file all of them, plain language, no embellishment, nothing that would read as a story to anyone skimming for volume instead of substance. But I added one line at the end that wasn't strictly required, because I wanted it in the permanent record where somebody, someday, might actually read it. 6 years of filings marked as noise. One voice folded into a growth cycle chatter pattern, repeating the same 12 words until somebody finally checked underneath the label. Recommend Auxiliary 9 be reclassified, effective immediately, from deprecated to monitored. Nobody's overturned that recommendation yet. I check every quarter, out of habit more than duty. So far the ban stays open.